I want to thank you for inviting me tonight, and that it gives me an excuse to thank many people that shaped me as I'm beginning this thing we call architecture. And it's going to start with Dean Hurst, who was the dean at the time, and a kind of an odd little story. This is 6 decades ago. I'm a somewhat naive, somewhat hopelessly lost 19-year-old that's decided I'm going to be an architect, and I'm heading up to San Luis Obispo, all packed and ready to go. And I'm driving up there, and I enter the campus, and the first 3 people I meet are quite nice, etc., but they're riding horses. And I'm a Chicago boy, and I was going, I don't think this is going to work. And I turned around and came home. And I can't quite remember, I don't think I even applied to USC, but I scooted over to the school. It was at Harris Hall at the time, and I remember there was sculpture and painting there at the time. This is 1963. And I walk into the dean's office unannounced, and I sit down, and the secretary, of course, or the assistant says, have you got an appointment? No. And I'll just sit and wait for him. And he finally comes out, and I go, hey, any chance I could talk to you? And believe it or not, he brings me in his office, and we have like an hour conversation, none of which I can remember other than I was asking if I could go to school, which is totally absurd. And here I am. I became that. But years later, I realized he was quite an extremely interesting character. He was quite young and just coming from Auburn. And he's a character that was studied with Gropius and brought all kinds of notions of the Bauhaus, et cetera, with him, which is about to shake up the program at the time. Well, then I'm in school, and I immediately meet these characters that I had no idea at the time of their importance. And I'm working with people like Pierre Koenig and Craig Elwood, and they're advancing my interest in enjoyment of doing versus arriving. And they're opening me up to kind of instincts that made sense to me at the time. And right after that, I'm meeting Ray Cappy. And I can still remember it like it was yesterday. This is six decades ago. He's taking me to the house, which is under construction, and it's just the concrete pieces going up. And I'm flabbergasted by the materiality and the kind of essence of this work, and his the way he talked about it, and the essence of his connection to this thing. And and I remember one time he took us to his office, and it's an atelier. And I remember wine bottles and a cat and a guitar, and nobody wore suits. And I'm forming in my notion of this is how I think I want to go. That this suits me, right? This is the art of architecture, and it attached to some notion of freedom that I was looking for, which I think a lot of the people in this audience are architects, because we're looking for a certain control of our own lives. Well, 4 years later, he's bringing me to teach at Cal Poly, and 4 years after that, we're starting a new school, and a beginning of a 5-decade-long relationship, all from this first experience as a student of his at USC. And then, of course, there was the person that formed me as an architect. There was Ralph Knowles, this extraordinary character, which is ahead of his time, and it was he pushed us, he opened us up to asking questions and understanding that our future has to do with the questions we ask. And he was clear about the work that comes from the forces that form it, and opened us up to broad notions of which today are much more common, having to do with landscape and environment and ecology and the resource, et cetera, which at the time was quite new. And with that, he was extraordinary, and then he allowed us to embrace uncertainty, mystery, doubt, and a willfulness to roam freely, and that's the normal condition of a creative person. all of which was advancing what we call critical thinking, complexity, and if I remember right, he talked about it in terms of the dimensional mind. Again, just extraordinary stuff for this young person that's just trying to understand what architecture is or isn't, right? We lost him last year, but this extraordinary character, and if I could ever have the ability to teach as he, that's my goal, to be able to pass on that kind of knowledge to the young people I work with. There's something else that's important at this moment that hasn't been said yet. I mean, I want to just about read this because it's very specific. Right now, at this exact moment, what's under assault is the most fundamental construct of what I inherited here. The scaffolding of human knowledge itself, a complete disregard for this institution as an agent of social mobility, for transformation. And make no mistake, it's all on the line at the very moment. And of course, I'm talking about a leader that it'd be hard pressed for him to run a 7-Eleven, much less that this is where we're standing now. And I say that because it's this group, I'm speaking to the choir, it's going to be much more important that we support these institutions and the value of free thinking and the notion that stands behind architecture as it's part of our society. I want to say, I want that to be not at all seen as a negative. It's something we have to solve like everything else, right? And it's somewhat extreme at this time and somewhat unusual for people that are used to a certain amount of openness in our society, but it's something that we as a group have to head on face, right, in terms of supporting our architecture community. I want to say also, I want to acknowledge, I assume that I'm here today being acknowledged as a leader of a collective practice. And many of my colleagues are here today, and the work you're looking at is the result of a huge number of incredibly dedicated people. And I have to say, one of the beauties of practicing architecture for 5 decades are the richness and the immense capability of the people that I've worked with, that have brought so much to me personally. And then finally, it's funny, I'm Blythe. I could have introduced, for those of you that don't know me, I could have said I'm the husband of Blythe. Blythe, not only my partner in life, but together we shared a vision, both personal and of this thing we call architecture. Thank you so much.